Mysterious lights, massive cigar-shaped objects, large flying discs appearing under planes, hovering over military bases, dropping into water and blasting off at impossible speeds. From Mexico to Iraq, Manchester to Wisconsin, these are unexplained objects in the sky caught on camera. This video comes out of Mexico. Back on May 22, 2009, there was an earthquake in Mexico City. About 5 hours later, this footage was captured, a series of objects filmed moving through the clouds. They didn't look like birds or planes. Now, it started as a single dark object floating through the sky, but then it got stranger. Smaller objects started coming out of it, almost like it was ejecting them. Yeah, a very bizarre video. I've never really seen anything like it, and a lot of commenters feel the same way. People are genuinely baffled by this one. But we're just getting started. This footage was captured way back in 2011, and somehow I only saw it for the first time today. Pretty surprising, because this is some crazy footage. The clip was uploaded to the YouTube channel Almex 2005. It was filmed in Denton, Manchester, and hung in the sky for around 40 minutes before slowly drifting up so high that it just disappeared out of sight. The footage is pretty shaky. That's because whoever filmed it was zoomed all the way in, but apparently this thing was way higher than normal planes. Judging by how high it was, it must have been massive. And for a better look, let's take a look at the stabilized version of the footage. Now we can really get a sense of this thing's shape. It's shaped almost like a cigar with a series of flashing lights on top. It looks like an unidentified flying object to me, but what do you all think? Share your thoughts down below. Now, this is not an AI-generated video. This footage was captured at a place called Skunk Works, which is basically Lockheed Martin's super secret aircraft division in California, where some of the most classified planes in history were built and tested. An investigative YouTuber named Anders Ottson camped out on public land overlooking the test site and ended up getting this absolutely incredible footage. I mean, what you're seeing is this flying saucer-looking thing sitting on top of a tall white support. Ottson said the object could be an advanced aircraft or a drone in an early stage of development. Skunk Works is famously secretive and has been behind some of America's most classified aircraft, like the U-2, the SR-71 Blackbird, and the F-11-7 Nighthawk. Because of that history, it's not hard to imagine this could be some sort of experimental aircraft, but some take it a step further, thinking that what Ottson filmed that day could be tests using technology not from Earth. All we can do is speculate though, because there's been no official statement from Lockheed Martin or the US military, and there probably never will be. This one comes from Wisconsin, where two factory workers, Alex Ramage and Andre Volk, were on break on November 4th, 2025, messing around with their phone camera to test the zoom while they filmed a plane overhead. And when they watched the clip later, they noticed something else in the sky that they hadn't seen in real time. This strange dish-shaped object moving through the air. The object looks like a clear oval shape. One of them said, quote, "You can make out a dome shape in the middle of the disc, like a traditional UFO people imagine." They were shocked because when they filmed it, they were just trying out the phone zoom. They didn't notice this thing until they replayed the video. Alex later told reporters, "We thought it was pretty wild and we're freaking out a bit." And he said they couldn't think of another explanation for what they caught on camera. He also pointed out that the movement looked different from a plane. It seemed to glide in a way that didn't match normal flight patterns. In 2016, a surveillance plane flying over Mosul, Iraq, recorded one of the clearest UAP videos ever seen. A metallic, spherical object zipped across the sky. The video wasn't public at the time, and only came out later when UFO podcaster Jeremy Corbell shared it, after investigator Dustin Slaughter obtained it through a Freedom of Information request. Corbell said, quote, "For the first time, we are releasing a military-filmed image of a UAP over an active conflict zone. The mysterious object kept a constant speed, and it didn't change altitude at all. Nobody's been able to officially explain what it is." Corbell pointed out that its, quote, "origin, capability, operator, and intent have not been determined," and added, "At a minimum, UAP pose a fundamental intelligence and combat identification problem that must be addressed." Back in July 2010, something unusual showed up over Xiaoshan Airport in China and ended up shutting the whole airport down. So a flight crew preparing to land reported a twinkling object in the sky, but when air traffic control checked, there was nothing on radar. Even with that, they didn't take any chances. Every flight was grounded and incoming planes were diverted to other cities. For about an hour, everything everything stopped. Close to 2,000 passengers were affected. It was the first time an airport in China had ever been closed because of something like this. At the same time, people on the ground were seeing something as well. Some described a glowing fireball moving across the horizon, while others captured photos and videos of this long and narrow object with bright lights along it. One man who was out walking with his wife said, "I felt a beam of light over my head. Looking up, I saw a streak of bright white light flying across the sky. So I picked up the camera and took the photo." Another witness, a bus driver named Yu, said the object suddenly moved off to the west, like it was, in his words, escaping from something. To this day, there's never been an official explanation for what caused the shutdown that night. This footage got out in 1995 and shows something being tracked out over the Nellis test range in Nevada. This wasn't just someone spotting a light in the sky. The video is coming from a range tracking camera, the same kind they used to follow jets during test flights. You can see the system actively tracking it the whole time, readouts for its position updating as it moves. It shows up as this bright, uneven shape. At one point, the system switches to auto track, tries to follow it, and then just loses it. The operator had to take over manually to keep it in frame. What makes it stranger is the radar side of it. See, early on there's a return, so something is there. Then the signal starts breaking up and eventually drops out completely, while the camera is still locked onto the object in the exact same area. So visually it's still there, but radar just stopped picking it up. Nothing was ever officially explained. This footage comes from April 5th, 2023. A group of hunters near Coos Bay, Oregon spotted something weird in the sky. A cube-shaped object hovering about 50 feet off the ground, maybe 300 feet away from them. They were out in this clear-cut area when one of them grabbed a camera and caught the short clip before they all just walked away, not thinking much of it at the time. I guess they were focused on their hunting. They didn't even remember seeing it until later, when the guy was going through his phone and came across the video again, and then suddenly the whole memory of that day came back. The footage is not crystal clear, obviously. You mostly see this dark shape against the sky, but whatever this thing was, it wasn't moving like a drone or a plane. But what do you all think? Don't forget to share those comments down below. This next video got a lot of attention when it first hit the net back in March of 2020. The footage was captured in Montreal. Someone got this beautiful footage of the moon in the late afternoon, but something very bizarre showed up. These mysterious white objects start floating past the moon. People have jokingly, or maybe not so jokingly, referred to them as space whales. Very strange video, and I love some of the comments on the Reddit post as well, which are, a little time capsule of 2020. Like one person who said, "It's aliens coming to rest at Carol effin' Baskin." There's this little stretch of time in those early lockdown days where everything was just Tiger King references all the time. People said that I look like Tiger King. I heard that from multiple people. So this clip popped up on Reddit just over a year ago. It was filmed in Iraq. Something is clearly gliding through the sky, but is it a drone? That's what you might think at first, but honestly, it doesn't really look like a drone that I've ever seen. Maybe it's some kind of experimental military craft, but the shape is what people immediately notice. It's very unusual. Rather than flat or perfectly round like most of these objects, this one is upright. Looks like Boba Fett's Slave One from Star Wars. And people around the world have seen similarly shaped objects in the sky, like Reddit user Pelican Biplane, who wrote in the comments, "I saw this exact thing with 4 friends during a white-winged dove hunt south of San Antonio. We set up in the middle of a field at daybreak. As I was searching the sky for white wing, I see this thing flying towards us from the north. I yelled out to my buddies, who all yelled back, 'What the F is that?' We all watched it fly over our field and then over the tree line. One of my buddies said it looked like the Monarch's hive from Venture Bros, just all black." About a year ago, people across Western Australia started reporting strange lights in the sky, and there's no clear agreement on what they were. One of the first sightings came from a father and son, Shane and Bradley Plain, who were driving along the coast. Shane pointed up at what looked like a star, but something about it was off. Bradley said the lights didn't stay still. They were shifting around, sometimes forming patterns instead of moving like normal aircraft or stars. Not long after, more reports started coming in from different towns, some of them hundreds of miles apart. A man named Matt Woods from the Perth Observatory looked into it and said the spread of sightings didn't make much sense. He checked flight radar data and found no aircraft in the sky at the time. His first thought was that it could be some kind of experimental drone, but it wasn't anything to confirm that, so this one still has no official explanation. Well, I don't know what this thing is, but it certainly ain't a plane. On August 23, 2012, a US military drone spotted something really strange over the Persian Gulf. An MQ-9 Reaper caught multiple glowing orbs moving together in formation. Officially, the US intelligence community logged them as UAPs. Footage was shot using infrared cameras, which normally pick up heat, but these orbs didn't give off any heat like a normal plane or helicopter would. They zipped around, changed directions suddenly, and seemed to move with purpose, except there was no visible engine, nothing that explained how they were flying. The official notes say their, quote, origin, intent, and capabilities remain unknown. The video came out thanks to Jeremy Corbell, who posted it on X. Corbell said the drone was actively tracking the orbs while they flew over the Gulf, and the footage came straight from the military. Back in October of 2024, people living near Grissom Air Reserve Base in Indiana started noticing lights in the sky. Not one, but several. One witness described it as a flock of UFOs. The footage shows this cluster of bright flashing orbs in the sky appearing and then disappearing. According to witnesses, they weren't blinking like aircraft though, and didn't follow a steady path. One person said the objects were hovering and then just taking off. Another described them as just sitting there, and then all of a sudden they started moving fast. A few people watched from the ground and said the lights would separate and come back together almost like they were coordinated. So it definitely wasn't a single drone or a plane passing through. And it's even more interesting that this happened right near an active military base. Were they testing something? Possibly, but there wasn't any official explanation. Back in November 2020, a US military plane picked up something weird over Afghanistan's Pakistan border. Nobody saw the video until independent journalist Jeremy Corbell released it. He spent years checking it out with insiders and said he was blown away by the implications of what the footage shows. The object is this smooth, round disc cutting through the clouds. Corbell called it a perfect-looking disc, maybe an orb. Most UFOs you see are kind of L-shaped, but this one is more of that classic flying saucer kind of look, at least from this angle. Officials apparently told him the disc showed, quote, abrupt movement and intelligent control. The things would zoom one way and then suddenly switch directions, and didn't give off any heat or show any signs of propulsion. The disc is estimated to be between 200 and 400 meters wide. The military still calls it a UAP and is investigating. Corbell's co-host George Knapp added on their podcast Weaponized, quote, the source is legit, we know it's real. And it was not supposed to be made public, but it should have been. One of the more well-documented UFO sightings out of Mexico happened on March 5, 2004, when Mexican Air Force pilots were flying over southern Campeche. During the flight, their sensors started picking up multiple objects nearby, and ended up spotting 11 separate objects, and the crew started recording them using infrared cameras. In the footage, you could see these bright points moving together, keeping a loose formation as they passed through the sky, and the recording goes on for a while. This wasn't something you'd miss if you blinked. These things were moving steadily and at times shifting position around the aircraft. The pilots tried to follow them, but even in a military aircraft, they couldn't close in. The objects kept moving smoothly without any obvious propulsion or flashing lights like standard aircraft, and eventually they just disappeared from view. Back in 2018, something got picked up over a US military base in Iraq, but nobody outside the military saw the footage until it was released in January of 2024. The object was tracked on infrared as it moved across the base. Then it dropped down into a nearby body of water and disappeared. It stayed under for about 17 minutes, then it came back up and took off at incredible speed. The Pentagon looked at it and officially labeled it a UAP. The weird part is how it showed up on infrared. It kept shifting from almost invisible to solid black. That means the object's temperature was constantly changing, not slowly either. It was jumping around fast enough that the system tracking it struggled to keep up. Dr. Matthew Zendegas, a physics professor at the University at Albany, said it was, quote, changing temperature faster than any known object. So you've got something moving through the air, going into water, staying there, and coming back out, taking off at high speed, all while its temperature is rapidly shifting. Oh, and of course it looks like a weird jellyfish thing. Yeah, probably just an over-the-counter drone, right? First up, we've got a Tic-Tac shaped UFO off the coast of California. So this footage came out during a congressional hearing on September 9th, 2023 by the Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets. It was recorded on February 15th, 2023 aboard the USS Jackson, west of San Diego, and Chief Alexandra Wiggins was watching it happen live. You can hear him commenting in the background as this luminous tic-tac shaped object rises straight out of the ocean. It zips back and forth for about 15 seconds before suddenly accelerating, disappearing almost instantly. Wiggins said what he and the crew saw didn't move anything like a plane or a drone that they know of. According to Wiggins, the object had no exhaust, no wings, nothing you would expect from a conventional aircraft. On December 26, 2018, in Neza City, Mexico, a man named Dr. Jaime Lun Becerra and his daughter were outside their home when they noticed what looked like a floating object descending slowly into the street. The longer they watched it, the stranger it looked. In Becerra's own words, it was an orb or sphere that came down. I was staring at it for a few minutes when I noticed this thing had these extensions that came out of it, almost like appendages, end quote. He went on to say that what he originally thought were lights weren't lights at all. He described it as some kind of glowing material, almost like fabric, shifting and moving on its own, and then it changed again. He said the object morphed into an almost humanoid shape, but not a clear one, more like a figure that was partially hidden, similar to the cloaking effect from Predator, which was his exact comparison. At one point, the object just stopped and hovered in place, almost like it was observing the area. In the CCTV footage, you can see both him and his daughter reacting to it in real time, clearly trying to process what they're looking at. After that, it shifts again and moves out of view. This was reported years before the US military jellyfish footage from Iraq was released. Watch part 1 if you want more info on that. But comparing the two, there are a lot of similarities here. The way it moves, the appendages, the way the surface seems to change instead of staying solid. It's weird stuff. And this bizarre video was filmed in Belgrade, Serbia on April 28th, 2020. And I do mean strange. When the camera person zooms in on the thing, you notice it's not only diamond shaped, it looks like it's made of molten lava. Is it a clever hoax? Maybe CGI? Well, the extra cool thing about this object was filmed by multiple people. So yes, something was definitely in the sky that evening. The deleted Reddit user who uploaded the first clip I showed you there wrote in the heading, "The surface of the craft perfectly matches the description in the Immaculate Constellation document. Dynamic, roiling like the surface of the sun with intense luminosity." Now, for those of you who are unaware of the Immaculate Constellation document, it's something that came up during a US congressional hearing in November of 2024. It wasn't released officially, it was handed over by a journalist who said it came from a government source. The document claims there's a hidden program set up around 2017 that collects and stores UFO footage and sensor data from things like drones, satellites, and military systems. In one section, it talks about craft that aren't solid in the normal sense, but instead look, quote, roiling like the surface of the sun, almost like they're made of moving energy instead of metal. And that sounds a lot like this UAP in Serbia to me. During this live UK news broadcast on February 1st, 2021, something unusual happened in the background. Nobody in the studio noticed it at the time, but viewers noticed it. While the anchor continued reading the story, a bright, fast object suddenly streaked across the sky outside the studio windows. The clip quickly spread online, with UFO researcher and blogger Scott C. Waring from the UFO Sightings Daily jumping on it and claiming it was, quote, 100% proof of UFOs over London. He slowed the footage down and said the light wasn't just a single object. It was actually two flying side by side, meaning they were moving in tandem, similar to how military aircraft sometimes fly in pairs, according to him anyway. But the video came from a standard live broadcast. There were no edits or special effects added, which also added fuel to the debate around it. Some viewers were not convinced it was anything unusual at all, of course, but what do you all think? Back on February 9th, 2009, a news crew in Rio Branco, Brazil ended up filming something that they definitely were not planning for. TV Gazeta had gone out after people in the area kept reporting a strange object hanging over the city, and when they pointed the camera up, well, there it was, hovering in the sky. The thing was glowing, constantly shifting colors between blue, red, and white, while staying almost completely still. unlike the person holding the camera. Anyway, more than 25 people saw this thing that night, all describing the same thing. It didn't just flash by and disappear, it stuck around for about 2 hours. Eventually, it started to move, slowly drifting across the city. First from east to south, then curving south to west. It definitely wasn't a plane. And while drones technically existed at the time, in 2009 they were far less common. There's never been any solid explanation for this one. On August 12, 2025, a father and son in Taunton, Massachusetts were stargazing when they noticed a strange white light in the sky around 10:30 at night. They weren't the only ones either, with similar sightings popping up in nearby towns like Avon, North Attleboro, and Sudbury. A National UFO Reporting Center later received 4 separate videos from these areas, all showing what looked like the same unexplained light. Basit Siddiqui, the father in Taunton, was actually using a telescope when he first saw the thing. I look up and I see this orb with a cloud around it, so I kinda took out my phone and started recording it right away, he said. It was kinda dropping down, and then from there it kinda took a right and shot straight down. What were they seeing that night? Your guess is as good as mine. During a live 9 p.m. broadcast on News 4's CW43 in Oklahoma City, in February of 2025, the weather segment took an unexpected turn. Meteorologist Aaron Brackett was in the middle of his segment when the skycam picked up something strange. I start seeing this object and it's flying faster, moving faster than anything I've really observed out there, Brackett said. On the live feed, a bright object suddenly shot across the night sky. A news chopper pilot named Mason Dunn later reviewed the footage, and he had no idea what it could be either, but was pretty confident it was not a plane or a helicopter. In the UK, a man says he accidentally filmed a UFO moving at what he describes as hypersonic speed while he was just out playing fetch with his dog. Andrew Clifton was in the Malvern Hills with his Labrador Dash throwing a frisbee when he filmed the object. At the time, he didn't notice anything strange at all. The thing was just moving way too fast to pick up with the naked eye. He only caught it later when he went through the footage again at home and spotted it shooting across the sky in the background. So he slowed the video down, and that's when he saw the object in full for the first time. After showing it to some friends, they told him to post it in the UFO Facebook group. From there, the clip got shared around, getting millions of views. Andrew says he's not fully convinced that it's anything alien or extraordinary, but he also can't fully explain it. He leans more toward a military explanation, and there are a number of military bases in the area, so that would make sense. This clip has become pretty famous. It's been online for a few years now, but lately, it's finally been getting the attention it deserves because it's an incredible piece of footage. Pilot Jorge A. Ortega was flying over Colombia when something caught his attention in the distance. At first, it looked like a small dark object sitting out ahead of the plane. As they got closer, it suddenly started moving, and fast. He grabbed his phone and started recording. The object was flying straight toward them. The plane was already moving at speed, and this object still managed to pass it in seconds. You only get a real quick look at it, but it's enough to notice the details. It looks metallic, silver, shaped like something that honestly it looks like it's from space. I'm not sure how else to describe it. This is a flying saucer if I've ever seen one. UFO researcher Jaime Maussan later backed the footage, calling it one of the strongest clips he's ever seen. No official explanation was ever given, and people still can't agree on what it actually is. Moving on to July of 2023, we've got this rather gorgeous looking unidentified flying object. This was spotted over Tamaulipas in northeastern Mexico. It's not really a solid ship per se, it looks more like a glowing ethereal light. It's possible there's a craft inside that light that's just hidden by the haze, and we're only seeing the glow. But TikTok user Marcela Guzman shared the clip, and honestly, it is pretty beautiful. It almost looks like a giant glowing jellyfish drifting through the night sky. As for what the hell it actually is, your guess is as good as mine. And once again in Mexico City, this sighting comes from 2015. Most UFO videos are these blink and you'll miss it blurry messes, but this one is different. We get a solid, long look at a dark object hovering in the sky. It doesn't look like your standard saucer though. The bulk of it is round, but Then it has these prongs hanging under it, almost looks like a spider. It's pretty cool. The footage eventually made its way to Scott Waring, a self-proclaimed UFO hunter, who's a bit of a regular in the scene. I've mentioned him multiple times in this series. He was impressed enough by the clarity of the craft that he shared it on his channel. Now, look, could it be a high-end drone or some kind of weirdly shaped weather balloon? Sure, but I found it weird enough to place on the list. If anyone has any clear explanation for this one, though, let us all know in the comments. Next up, we have what many consider the holy grail of classic UFO photography, the McMinnville photos. It all began on a farm in Sheridan, Oregon on May 11th, 1950. At around 7:30 p.m., Evelyn Trent was outside feeding her rabbits when she saw a metallic disc-shaped object coming toward her from the northeast. She ran inside to get her husband Paul. They both watched the thing for a bit. Paul managed to grab their Kodak camera and snap 2 shots before the object sped away to the west. Paul's father also said he caught a glimpse of it before it vanished. The funny thing is, they weren't really in any rush to show the world. Maybe they were just scared they'd be laughed off, but they actually left the film in the camera until they finished the roll with Mother's Day family photos. Eventually, Paul told his banker about it, and once the banker saw the prints, he put them in the bank window for everyone to see, and from there, it blew up. The local paper ran them, and then Life magazine picked them up, making the Trents famous overnight. The photos have been debated for decades. In the late 60s, a government-funded study called the Condon Committee looked into them, and one of their scientists, William Hartman, was really impressed. He did some testing on the lighting and how washed out the object looked compared to the background, and he figured the saucer was a large physical object, quite a distance away from the camera, not a small toy held up close or something like that. Of course, not everyone is convinced though. Some have pointed out that the shadows in the photos look like they were taken in the morning rather than in the evening, like the Trents reported, and there's a theory that the object could be a side view mirror from a car hanging from the power lines. But the Trents never changed their story, and they never tried to make any money off the photos. They stood by what they saw until they passed away in the late 90s. Finally, at the top spot, we're going behind the Iron Curtain to 1969. Reports started leaking about a supposed UFO crash in the dense forests near Sverdlovsk, known today as Yekaterinburg. They see what appears to be a Soviet military truck and KGB agents swarming a crash site where a silver saucer-shaped craft is partially embedded in the dirt. This footage eventually became the centerpiece of a documentary about secret KGB UFO files, and it's been debated ever since. Some think it's a clever hoax, maybe a crashed experimental Soviet plane, but even in that case, it would still be classified as a UFO. But because the Soviet Union is basically a black hole for information, we'll probably never get a straight answer. This clip was supposedly filmed in the UK back in 2011 and shows a classic metallic saucer moving through some trees at the end of a field. The camera work starts off pretty shaky, but once it zooms in, you get a much better look at the object. It's just hanging there, totally still, before it starts to glide toward the tree line. The way the light hits the dome makes it look like a solid physical thing, not just some cheap digital trick. But the craziest part is the ending. After moving slowly for a few seconds, the object just suddenly vanishes into thin air. Now, you've always got to be skeptical with stuff like this, of course, especially when there's little to no information on the video. Is it CGI, a physical model on a wire? I can't say, but it's a strange one. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide. Share your thoughts down in the comments. This video was shot in Williams, Arizona back in February 2024, and it's pretty intense. We see this dark disc-shaped craft hovering in the sky as the sun is setting in the background. Definitely creates a pretty dramatic looking scene. You know what else adds to that drama? The bright white beam or discharge coming from the bottom of the flying object. It looks like a scene out of War of the Worlds. This story popped up on Reddit about 8 months ago, shared by a user named PositiveSong2293, and it's similar to the V-shaped object that we talked about earlier. The original footage was captured by Jonathan Jimenez on June 28th. He was standing there in total shock while filming the night sky. The object was moving steadily from south to north. What really grabs you is the shape. It's triangular, kind of looks like an Imperial cruiser from Star Wars, but what are we actually looking at here? Is it just a high-end drone being flown at night? Some kind of classified military test? Or could it actually be an alien craft? As always, what's your take on this? This footage out of Turkey may be some of the most convincing UFO footage ever filmed. Between 2007 and 2009, a night guard named Yalcin Yalmen filmed these objects over the Sea of Marmara using a camera with a massive zoom lens. And when he zoomed in all the way, he didn't just find a metallic disc-shaped object, he caught what looks like a cockpit or bridge. If you look at the zoomed-in frames, you can see these dark shapes that some people, many people actually, swear are the silhouettes of two humanoid pilots with large heads. The scientific community in Turkey didn't just brush this off either. The original tapes were handed over to the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey, and they reportedly analyzed the film and basically said it was 100% authentic. So, not CGI, not a physical model or a toy, and there were no double exposures or tricks used to fake the footage. Of course, the skeptics have a different take. The most common rational explanation is that this is just a complex mirage where light bends over the water to show a distorted image of a cruise ship on the distant horizon. But not everyone buys that, pointing out that a lot of the sightings happened late at night when the sun wasn't around to create that specific temperature inversion needed for a massive mirage like that. And this phenomenon is one of the coolest natural mysteries in the world: Naga fireballs. See, every year, right around late October, crowds gather along the Mekong River in Thailand to watch these glowing reddish orbs shoot out of the water and vanish into the night sky. Locals have been watching these ghost lights for centuries, long before they were officially dubbed the Naga fireballs in the 80s. While they're most famous on the Mekong, they've also been spotted in smaller ponds and rivers nearby. They vary in size, ranging from tiny sparks to as big as a basketball, and on a busy night, thousands of them can rise from the water along a 250-kilometer stretch of the river. The most common theory is that old organic gunk at the bottom of the river rots and builds up pockets of methane or phosphine gas. Eventually, these bubbles pop up to the surface and catch fire the second they hit the air, but scientists still haven't actually proven why it happens with such a strict yearly schedule. So the Naga fireballs are still a bit of a mystery. This first clip was posted to X by a UFO researcher named Dr. Dan, who said that an Italian family on vacation captured strange footage of bizarre glowing orbs in the sky, and that's pretty much exactly what the footage shows. Now, most of the video is just mundane footage of the family out on a hike, but then they notice something in the sky. A single orb flying past the sun. It zips behind some trees at incredible speed, so they decide to head after it. Eventually they reach a clearing, and that's when they spot the orb again, this time just hovering in the air. And zooming in, they notice there are multiple orbs, a larger one with two smaller ones circling around it. But then, in the blink of an eye, the larger orb takes off into the air. It was a Thursday afternoon in November 2007 when a carpenter named Marvin Dalia was working on a job site in the hills of Tarbaca, Costa Rica. At about 3:49 p.m., Marvin looked up and saw what he described as a polished metallic object about the size of a tractor tire hovering just 100 meters away. It was so close and so still that Marvin actually felt the craft was giving him time to get it on tape. While his friend William was busy with his power tools, totally oblivious to the object, Marvin fumbled for his phone. He managed to catch the object on camera, and the footage is pretty nuts. It hangs there in the air with no engine noise and zero wind displacement, then suddenly pulls a 90-degree turn, it tilts completely on its side, and then flies off at lightning speed. And as one Redditor commented, it seems to move the way Bob Lazar describes, with the UFO turning on its side before accelerating away. Just a few days ago, on April 11th, 2026, a Redditor named Wally_Street was working the graveyard shift at a remote mine in the northern Northwest Territories, and around 12:30 a.m., things took a turn for the weird when he and his crew spotted a strange, flared light drifting across the sky from the northeast to southwest. At first they tried to rationalize it, maybe it was just a haul truck moving along one of the dumps in the distance, but as they watched, they realized the light was way too high for any ground vehicle. They thought it might be a plane, but there was a total lack of any blinking marker lights, and the only thing they could hear was the faint hum of a truck miles away, not a plane noise. Wally actually checked Flight Radar 24 afterward, which is a live flight tracker, and sure enough, there wasn't a single aircraft scheduled to be anywhere near their site at that time of night. The object didn't wobble like a drone or behave like anything they'd seen over the mine before. It just held its shape and kept a steady course until it eventually got washed out by the bright lights of the site. Next, we're going to talk about a man named George Adamsky. Back on May 1st, 1952, at around 8 a.m., he snapped a couple photos that caused quite a stir. Adamsky claimed his backyard in Mount Palomar in San Diego County, California, was a bit of a UFO hotspot. He was convinced he caught a shot of a massive cigar-shaped object, which he referred to as a mothership, passing in front of the moon. And that's not all. He also caught what he said were 6 smaller crafts flying in a tight formation after leaving the lunar surface. Adamsky said he had even more photos that ended up getting destroyed, and get this, he claimed he was chatting with aliens using hand signals and telepathy. Real or not, you have to admit the guy would be a fascinating person to grab a drink with. This next one is coming straight from the top secret files. We're looking at a declassified Pentagon piece of footage. It was finally released after years of them basically denying stuff like this. In January 2023, while some cameras were monitoring an MQ-9 Reaper drone, this mystery object just zips into the frame. It's moving at incredible speed, and what's really wild is that it was going so fast it actually seemed to disturb the air around it, leaving this weird atmospheric wake behind instead of a normal vapor trail before it vanished. This is footage of an object that's been referred to as the Las Lomas UFO. It was captured in 1997 in the Las Lomas area of Mexico City. It's pretty much exactly what you'd imagine a UFO to look like, a silver, disc-shaped craft floating through the sky. The person filming is clearly losing their mind over it. The object is pretty wobbly though, which has skeptics saying it's probably just a model on a string, but on the flip side, some believers think the wobbling could mean the ship was malfunctioning, which would explain why it was flying so low to the ground. What's interesting is that it definitely seems to be a physical object at a distance rather than some sort of camera trick. Plus, pulling off CGI like that in 1997 wasn't exactly something you could do on a home computer, so I'm not sure what to make of this one, but what do you all think? Share your thoughts down below. This is some pretty incredible footage. It's been floating around the internet for nearly 2 decades now, but it's only recently started picking up more attention. It first showed up on 4chan back in 2008. It's known as the flyby footage, and people on UFO message boards have been talking about it for years. It's a mysterious video. We don't know exactly where it was filmed, but we do know the plane was a Boeing 737. The video we're looking at also looks to have been captured by someone filming a screen, so it's not the original footage. This is probably one of the most up-close and personal pieces of possible UFO footage ever captured, though. Back in March of 2024, a passenger named Michelle Reyes was on a commercial flight over LaGuardia Airport in New York when she looked out the window and saw something that she definitely wasn't expecting. She caught a video of a flying cylinder, this dark metallic looking object right next to the plane. It looked like a solid, sleek tube. Michelle was understandably freaked out and reached out to the FAA and even NASA to see if they had any record of it. According to the reports, she said, "The first thing I did was email the FAA to let them know what I saw. Maybe it was a safety hazard, but unfortunately, I haven't heard back from them. They didn't acknowledge my email." The footage ended up getting a lot of eyes on it, including some UFO investigators. Ben Hansen, a former FBI agent who does a lot of work on these cases, looked at it and ruled out, a drone or bird. And in his words, "We found no evidence that it's been faked or CGI. It's there, it's very clear." This is another mysterious video, supposedly captured in 2025 by a passenger in a plane. We see a classic metallic-looking flying saucer cruising right past the window. It starts with a shot out the window where you can see the plane's wing and the bright sun in a clear blue sky. Then this dark disc-shaped object enters the frame, flying at what looks like the same altitude as the jet. It's got that stereotypical UFO look, smooth, rounded, and reflective. The camera follows it for a few seconds as it moves across the sky. You can clearly see the sun glinting off its surface. I'm not sure exactly where this was filmed, but apparently it was somewhere over the USA. In late August of last year, 2 people in Los Angeles were hanging out on their balcony late at night when they spotted this massive black V-shaped craft flying across the sky. They didn't just see a flash and miss it, they watched it for about 25 minutes. One of the witnesses described the initial shock of seeing it, saying, "While sitting on my balcony, I saw a light in the sky bigger than the stars usually appear. When they zoomed in with their phone, they realized that this was not a satellite. It had a distinct V shape with what looked like 9 white lights glowing along the edge." He eventually lost track of it around 11:38 p.m. Researcher Mark Christopher Lee thinks it's likely some secret military technology being tested out of nearby spots like Area 51 or Vandenberg, saying, "I'm convinced that a lot of famous UFO incidents are basically highly advanced terrestrial technology that is 30 to 40 years ahead of what we think they have." Next, let's talk about one of, if not the largest UFO sightings in history. So on July 11th, 1991, Mexico City was in the middle of a total solar eclipse, the last total eclipse of the century. But thousands of people looked up and saw way more than just the moon covering the sun. While the city was plunged into darkness, people all over the place started spotting this shiny metallic object hovering in the sky. One of the first people to catch it on tape was a TV exec named Guillermo Aragon, who was filming the eclipse from a rooftop. After the footage aired, TV networks got absolutely hammered with calls. Other witnesses started coming forward with their own tapes, like a 19-year-old student named Eric Aguiar, who said, quote, "We saw this dot. It was shining brightly. It wasn't a dot anymore, it was a large object, and it was giving off light. It was shining." About 60 miles away, a businessman named Louis Lara caught a similar object on camera. What makes this case so hard to debunk is that multiple people shot video of the same type of object from different cities at the exact same time.
At number 10, fish. Okay, yuck, right off the bat. Imagine you're heading home trying to beat the storm that's suddenly appeared out of nowhere in a coastal town, and then fish start falling out of the sky. It's surprisingly and hilariously pretty common. Strong winds generated from tornadoes or hurricanes can sometimes suck up schools of fish and then drop them over a grocery store parking lot and then terrify everybody involved. Back in 2017 in Tampico, Mexico, on a Tuesday morning, it rained small fish. And yes, they're still alive, many of them, which makes this sad but also kind of funny. It makes it way funnier. There's numerous accounts of this phenomenon happening throughout old history. In this 1680 Erasmus Francisci painting, it appears to be raining rats. So maybe it was a strong hurricane, sucked up a bunch of dirty rats and threw them at some poor sailor. They had to document it via paint. Also, documents from Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder spoke about flightless animals falling from the sky back in like 2 BC, you know what I mean? Storms of frogs and fish? This is terrifying. I hope I never experience this in real life. Has this happened to you in Florida or anything like that? Comment down below. Number 9, spiders. Yeah, not a fun list anymore, eh? Not everything that falls from the sky can feed a family. Sometimes it can just terrify one instead. Back in 2015 in, you guessed it, Australia, residents of Goulburn woke up to the town just caked in spiders. Yeah, tiny spiders, just millions of them, just covering everything. It's horrible. I have goosebumps talking about this. Everything was webbed. There were tiny black spiderlings, and resident Ian Watson told reporters that, quote, "When I looked up at the sun, it looked like this tunnel of webs going up for a couple of 100 meters into the sky." End quote. Also, delete memory. Thank you. Rick Vedder, an entomologist at the University of California at Riverside, says that many spiders are ballooning around us every day. Just, not all at once, so we don't notice them. Yeah, this is happening all the time, so keep your head up, I guess. Ugh. I saw one do it one time, and I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a spider just hanging, and then all of a sudden he just went up and away. And I was like, there's no building, there's no scaffolding. I don't understand what's going on. Now we know. Number 8, candy. Okay, let's sweeten up this list for a hot minute before we throw up on our keyboards. Great. Fish and spiders falling from the sky. What about something not horrible, Taylor? Do we have any of those? Back in 1987 in Lake County, California, it rained candy twice. Yeah, what the hell happened here? How many cavities fell from the sky? That's amazing. Balls of crystallized sugar around a 1/4 inch in diameter fell. Yeah, just sticky syrup. It was flakes of crystallized sugar that had floated up into a storm and then had fallen down somewhere else. Not the worst case scenario. Nothing like number 7, red rain. This would be pretty alarming. Red rain? Is this the apocalypse? I would never go outside again. Residents of northwest Spain were alarmed one morning when it started to rain blood. Yeah, just red. obviously, that's the thing. That's awful. This was 2014. Water fountains were red. That was a telltale sign something was afoot here, but where did this red rain come from? This microscopic algae fell from the skies in a previous rainfall. This freshwater algae called Haematococcus pluvialis, which turns bright red when under stress, ended up just, falling and scaring everybody. This also happened in September 2001 as well. It rained red water over Kerala, India. A case of algae spores that frightened lots of residents first. That's all this is. Number 6. Treasure. Back in June 1940, the Russian village of Meskchera had a lucky rainfall. Coins. Yeah, coins fell from the sky. Coins from the 16th century, of all times, began raining down, which would probably hurt your head. Sometimes it rains iguanas, other times it rains treasure. Yeah, welcome to Earth. It all came from an undiscovered treasure trove that was buried close by, and again, a storm lifted the newly exposed treasure into the sky. And then from there, it only had one place to go. Thank you, soil erosion. That's not bad. Imagine getting hit with a 16th century coin though. That would leave a mark. You'd have to pay your medical bills using the coin that hit you. Wouldn't that be ironic?
Coming in at number 5 is the UFO cloud. This one was uploaded by YouTube user UFO VNI, who is a Philadelphia resident. Now, we've seen weirdly shaped clouds before, it's definitely not uncommon, but some people believe that UFOs sometimes hide in the clouds to avoid being detected, whereas others go a step further and believe that UFOs can disguise themselves as clouds. I mean, never say never, right? So in this video, there seems to be a random small cloud in the sky, but then as you continue watching, the cloud starts moving and shifting in a really weird way. The cloud seems like it's reflective of light and transparent, and it's moving through the sky with a purpose and a lot quicker than a normal cloud. It's even moving faster than the clouds directly around it. The cloud also had different lights in it, and the user went on to narrate he had never seen anything like that in his life, and after watching the video, neither have I. At number 4 is the cloud wave. Back in 2010 on a beach in Helsinki, Finland, people were enjoying their Sunday off at the beach when they suddenly saw a massive dark dramatic cloud coming right towards them. Now, they initially thought it was a storm cloud, so no real panic had ensued at that point, and I don't even believe it's a storm cloud to be honest, because I've never seen one so vast and dark and low in the sky. Beachgoers said they felt it was so low they could actually touch it. In the video, it literally looks like the cloud will devour anything in its path like it's the doomsday cloud. I'm not even kidding you. Birds literally flew out of the way of this cloud because it was that ominous. No explanation given, just a bunch of terrified tanned Finnish people. Filling our number 3 slot is the yellow flash. In November of 2013, over the city of Sverdlovsk in Russia, a giant flash happened in the sky. Now mind you, this was at night, so the sky was pitch black 1 second, and then all of a sudden it went red, then orange, then yellow, and then it expanded and took over more of the sky as it changed color. It lasted mere seconds, but it was unmistakable, and there were no military bases near the area, so explanations involving that or disposing of explosives was ruled out. The next explanation was that perhaps it was a bolide linked to the peak of the Leonids meteor shower, but lights from meteors are usually blue or green or white because of their temperature, so that wasn't it either. Either way, no one knows where the flash came from, but it came and went, and everyone's just gonna pretend like it never even happened. That's brilliant. Let's just continue doing that. Now at number 2 are the fireballs. This one was seen in Canada, and I'm actually speechless over what it could possibly be. It looks like some sort of CGI stuff or some effect of some kind, but it's 100% real. In the sky, there seemed to be 2 flaming balls that had constant streams of white smoke coming out the top of them. But that wasn't even the weirdest part. There seemed to be a line connecting the 2 fireballs, but it wasn't a line, it looked like an electricity link of some kind. It was a straight white line with electrical current seemingly coming off of it. They moved straight across the sky on the trajectory of this line, and no one had any explanation whatsoever on what it was, how it got there, or that energy line connecting them both. And finally, at number 1 are the dancing lights. This one genuinely freaked me out when I watched the footage, I'm not even gonna lie. This one took place in Greenwood, Indiana, and Quaid M13 uploaded quite an HD video of it onto YouTube. Now in the video, the sun itself is behind some clouds that you can see very clearly, but on the left of it there's a stream of yellow light that comes and goes and dances in different directions. It's the exact same color and brightness as the sun's light, and honestly, just imagine someone trapped a sun ray in a flashlight and then they were just doing this in clouds. That's exactly what it looked like. The video goes on for 2.5 minutes, and the only explanation people have offered is that perhaps it was a crown flash. And crown flash is due to ice crystals in a cirrus cloud merging with the electrical field of a rising cumulus cloud. I never knew I'd know so much about clouds, but now I do. While the field changes, the crystals snap and move, reflecting sunlight in different ways, hence we saw them dancing. Now some people fully believe that this explanation is the right one, and others say that there's no way that that was that. You guys choose whichever explanation you like.
Now take a look at these photos. They first showed up about 10 years ago, but they're supposedly way older than that. The story is that they were taken back in March of 1971 from the USS Trapang, a US submarine moving between Iceland and islands near Norway during a routine mission. Now, according to the lore, someone on board spotted these strange objects through the periscope and snapped these images. A man named John Kalika is said to have been the one who first noticed them. The photos didn't go public until decades later, after they appeared in a French magazine called Top Secret, following what was described as a leak. And that's when a paranormal investigator named Alex Mistretta started digging into them. He ended up getting copies from an unknown source somewhere in Europe, and now they're all over the internet. They're pretty incredible images, but do you think these could be genuine UFOs caught on camera? Let us know down in the comments. In September 2016, a police helicopter was flying over the Bristol Channel in Wales around 9 p.m. when something strange showed up on their thermal camera. The crew couldn't see anything with their own eyes, but on the infrared feed there was a clear object moving across the sky. This thing was tracked at around 106 miles per hour, and it was going against the wind the whole time. At first, police considered that it might just be a drone, but the speed didn't line up with anything available back then. It was also picked up by local air traffic control, and it was giving off heat. Former police officer Gary Haseline later released the footage and pushed for answers, saying this is verified police helicopter infrared footage showing an object not seen with the naked eye, but clearly seen in the infrared spectrum. It is moving against the wind, so it is not a balloon, nor is it emitting any heat signature indicating a propulsion system. On the morning of August 15th, 1950, Nick Mariana, who managed the Great Falls Electric's baseball team, was at the stadium in Great Falls, Montana, with his secretary Virginia Ronig, when they spotted these two bright, silvery objects flying above the field. Mariana estimated they were roughly 50 feet wide and flying about 150 feet apart. He described them as spinning as they moved and said they were traveling at speeds between 200 and 400 miles per hour. He quickly pulled out a 16mm film camera, but only managed to record about 16 seconds of footage. The next day, the Great Falls Tribune reported on what he'd filmed. The story eventually reached the U.S. Air Force after a reporter contacted Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Captain John Brindleston interviewed both Mariana and Ronig, and both also mentioned seeing two jet aircraft fly over the stadium shortly after the objects appeared. The Air Force later concluded the footage showed reflections from those jets. They said there was nothing unusual in the film, but Mariana pushed back on that. He claimed the first portion of the film, the part that supposedly showed the objects spinning more clearly, was now missing. Some others who'd seen earlier versions of the footage also backed him up on that, saying those frames showed these rotating metallic discs. The Air Force denied this, saying only a single damaged frame had been removed. Back in June of last year in Pembroke, Massachusetts, a woman named Colleen McCormick spotted something strange while relaxing in her backyard. Around 9 p.m., she was sitting near her hot tub when she noticed an oddly shaped object falling fast through the sky. She managed to record it on her phone. It looked like it was on fire or something. It was just coming down really fast, McCormick said. She immediately ran to the front of her house, expecting to hear this loud impact when it hit nearby, but the blinking object suddenly vanished from sight instead. My heart was pounding because I just looked up. I'm like, oh God, what is about to happen right now, she said. The Federal Aviation Administration later responded, but they didn't really have a whole lot to add, saying they hadn't received any reports of debris in the area, that they typically don't comment on third-party videos like this. On the ground, both the Pembroke Police Department and Fire Department reported no signs of wreckage and no related calls from the neighborhood. So what was it she spotted that night?
Number 10 is the floating city. On October 7th, 2015, in the city of Foshan, China, a rare mirage occurred in which a city seemed to be floating in the sky. This was literally seen by thousands of people. It wasn't just a trick of the light or someone lying about it. The footage literally looks like a city. You can see the blocks of the buildings and it looks like a skyline. The whole incident only lasted a few minutes before disappearing, but it did end up on the Chinese news. Some people believe it was due to a government government project that only the elite know about, and therefore it was just dismissed as some kind of reflection of some kind, whereas other people believe it's actually Fata Morgana, which basically just means a very superior form of a mirage. Don't know why they have to give it a fancy name. Either way, I don't think a whole city can somehow become a mirage for a few minutes, but I'm also no scientist, so the wildest explanation I read was that it was part of the Blue Beam project, which is a secret project developed by the US, and the point of it is to manipulate the weather and create artificial natural disasters. I don't know why they would want to fake create that. And the mirage they saw was them testing it out to see how the public would react to it. Don't know why they did it in China though, I doubt they did, but there's that too. Coming in at number 9 is the Death Cloud. Back in 2017, residents of Teixeira de Freitas in Brazil saw a menacing sight in the clouds. They dubbed it the Apocalyptic Cloud or the Death Cloud, and the videos literally looks like a red claw has emerged from hell and is reaching into the sky. The whole thing was red and it looked like it was a shadow of a meteor that was just about to hit Earth but then stopped a bit before it did. It dissipated into nothing within 5 minutes, but residents were truly terrified. Someone thought the world was ending, another thought it was going to form a tornado, whereas some people saw it as the work of God and called it perfection. It really is a mixed bag of reactions really. Perfection on one hand, death cloud on the other, whatever you want really. At number 8 we have the Black Ring. Back in 2015 in Kazakhstan, a video was uploaded by someone living in the village of Shortandi, I don't know, the pronunciation wasn't on Google, don't come for me. They captured what appeared to be a giant black smoke ring in the sky that floated there for 15 minutes and then disappeared as smoke usually tends to do. Now this sort of sight has been seen thrice before, once in Leamington but that was due to a fireworks test, another time in Florida but that was due to a pyrotechnic test, and another one in Chicago due to an electrical transformer blowing up. Nice. Either way, after investigation, nothing seemed to have happened to have caused the ring. No fire related activity, no blown up transformer, nothing. People were speculating whether it was the work of witchcraft or perhaps the portal to hell. Filling our number 7 slot is the Phoenix Light. Back in 2017, a Phoenix City camera as well as thousands of other cameras owned by normal people caught sight of something incredible. The whitish bluish fireball can be seen appearing out of nowhere in the sky and hurtling towards Earth as it gets bigger and brighter and then disappears altogether like it was never even there. Now most people speculated it was a meteor, but many remained unconvinced and looked towards the extraterrestrial as a possible explanation. What do you guys think? Now at number 6 is the Face Cloud. This one happened in 2011 in a place called Grand Falls, which is in New Brunswick, Canada. Dennis LaForge was watering his plants when he looked at the sky and took out his iPhone. The clouds in the video are moving extremely quickly, well quicker than the average cloud would move, and the cloud formation then starts forming a giant face. I kid you not, a giant face. The face gets more detailed as it moves forward, and it almost seems like the face is the thing propelling the cloud forward. The space for eye sockets is visible, a nose, lips, a chin. It's so detailed it's not even funny. People dubbed it the face of God gliding across the sky. The only explanation George Isaac had, who is a senior cloud scientist, was that clouds come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Thank you, George, for that insightful commentary. Even I could have said that, and I'm not a senior cloud scientist.
Number 5. Golf balls. Speaking of painful circular things falling from the sky, here we go. Heading over to Florida, of course. September 1st, 1969, a rainstorm started to turn heads and also make heads look down and run into buildings immediately. Sometimes large hail is described as golf balls. Well, this time it was literally raining golf balls. Dozens of golf balls fell from the sky and we never figured out where they came from. Now, of course, being Florida, there's many golf courses around, so there's a few hints, sure, but none of them could officially claim the golf balls. The most realistic explanation is that a local pond had these piled up over time, and the storm, this water spout, just sucked up everything, probably alligators included, terrifying, and then just launched it around town. Then they bounced for 48 minutes, never stopped. Florida's western Gulf Coast, more like the Gulf Coast. Hit that thumbs up, I tried really hard on that one. Number 4, 2021 rocket. Yeah, remember last year when a large piece of space junk was about to crash somewhere on Earth and we had no idea where it was gonna hit? Found that out over Twitter. I was like, ooh, rocket roulette, what does that mean? Well, where did it land? Well, at the time, this was one of the biggest pieces of human-made space junk to ever crash towards Earth. So, nice, new record, but also terrifying. They said it would land in New York or New Zealand. Okay, great, awesome. Thanks for the tip-off, space experts. Thanks, NASA. The debris came from the Long March 5B rocket and landed in the Indian Ocean, thankfully, with most of it burning up upon re-entry. So usually when rockets discard pieces, it's done so strategically, falling into the ocean, normally the Atlantic. This was not supposed to happen. We were not supposed to see that on Twitter. This wasn't supposed to be a maybe. Maybe it'll hit New York, maybe New Zealand. No, never again. It was like almost an Avengers level threat right there, you know what I mean? That was scary. Number 3, Hodge's meteorite. These happen pretty often, but luckily, most of the time, it doesn't, wipe out everybody and everything on our planet, like the dinosaurs. Sorry guys, thanks for taking one for the team. We appreciate it. Back in 1954, residents at Talladega County, Alabama, noticed a ball of fire heading towards them. Yeah, this was back when we didn't have Twitter and we couldn't warn people that a meteor was going to hit. We also really didn't know how to tell if meteorites were coming or, going, so it was alarming, especially for Anne Elizabeth Hodges, who got hit by said space rock. Yeah, that ball of fire hit her. Now you may be asking, was she outside stargazing? Was she doing a cosmic ritual? No, she was napping in her living room, and then an 8-pound chunk of meteorite smashed through her roof and then grazed her hip. Yeah, she got grazed by a meteorite and only received a bruise. First human to ever get hit by a meteorite. What a flex that is. Also, glad you're okay. I thought orange hockey balls hurt growing up. A meteorite? Jesus, Chris, imagine that. I don't know, the orange hockey balls did suck though. It wouldn't even make a sound too, it'd just be like, oh, it's made of like glass. What is it? Number 2, iguanas. Okay, we're immediately dipping back into the weird side of this list, of course. Gotta finish on a note. Back in 2018, Florida got another odd headline. This time it was frozen iguanas that were falling from the skies. Yeah, frozen iguanas. I couldn't think of anything more strange. They got hit with their first huge snowfall in 28 years, so these cold-blooded dudes started to fall from suburban tree branches from above, right? People were just walking to get groceries and iguanas are freezing and falling off in front of them. The craziest thing is though, is that they're just paralyzed, that they later will come back to life. Officials were calling for residents to not touch them or pick them up. Just gotta wait this one out. Yeah, sorry I can't make it to work, boss. There's a frozen iguana on the roof of my car, so gotta work from home, I guess, until he thaws. Number 1, go fast. Okay, a bit more modern now. This one was trending recently, but it was originally recorded back in 2015. It was part of that big alien leak that we got to witness over the pandemic, which also, side note, that was fun. Middle of a pandemic, the news is also like, hey, UFOs, maybe, we don't know. What you're seeing here is an FA-18 Super Hornet following a UAP. Yeah, we don't call them UFOs anymore. That's so 2000s. That's so M. Night Shyamalan to call them UFOs. No, now they're UAPs. And a US Navy personnel caught this UAP flying alongside the East Coast. There was no exhaust, no wings, just a really fast flying egg. Nice. A 45-foot long egg, 20,000 feet above the Atlantic, then flew away, and we haven't seen it since.